Welcome in everybody to the Players League, presented by Brightspeed Fiber Internet. Innovative program connecting gaming, STEM education, and real-world career opportunities. Mission is clear here, Monkey Men. Empower students through competition, mentorship, and hands-on learning experiences to shape the leaders of tomorrow. And like I said, leading the charge with me today is Mr. Monkey Man. How you doing today, sir?
You know what? It's a fantastic time to be here. We have been a month and more, if you count a few extra days, heading into this weekend, into the Players League. And every Wednesday, now becoming a fantastic Friday with you, Bear Light. It feels like we have been finding some fantastic momentum to go through. In the Players League, it's been combining so much from not just Madden, but also the STEM curriculum. And it feels like all that awesome focus that we're getting through all these students and the way that they're bringing so much competition to the gridiron and to the classroom has really been elaborative through all these weeks.
Always a great day when you can, number one, go 10 lessons deep into STEM curriculum, mastering things like storyboarding, for example, filming, video editing, culminating the creation of business plans, advertisements specifically, and being able to open up new pathways in the world of STEM. Specifically, I know that you're part of STEM as well as far as your day-to-day operations too. So you certainly see the application of how esports and STEM go hand in hand.
I really wish there was more esports in my office. I feel like people would be far less depressed, especially working as a government contractor. But you know what? I get to see a lot of cybersecurity, and yes, that actually has been the last 16 years of my pathway. But you know what? As much as people really aren't competing for much more than their pension wherever I get to sit in my office, competition does in fact fuel that engagement and that growth. And these students right now, they are competing regionally in an exciting Madden 25 tournament, showcasing all that strategic knowledge and all the ability to find that kind of prowess that makes them really kind of stand out. And we've got these 4 awesome regions overall, and we'll be able to highlight a few of these. We've been seeing so much of the Green Bay side as well as Houston side, as you've got Green Bay Southwest High School and Bayport High. Houston, their region, the Woodlands Christian Academy, and Stafford High School, really bringing some big work so far. But there's 2 other regions as well here, Bear, as this is a four-way fight.
That's right. Yeah, that's just the central side. That's a cool thing about Players League. It's really across the country. On the East Coast, specifically where I am, love it. Carolina's got Kearns Academy, T. Wingate Andrews, and the New England region made up of Hartford Public High School and Sport and Medical Sciences Academy, as we know effectively as SMSA, as we've been friends with them for a long time. Glad to see them on board as far as this project goes too. And of course, you know, you have this effective curriculum put into place by no other than the director of ed. So let's go ahead and bring him in. How exciting is this? We've got Justin Ellis with us here today. Justin, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, guys. I've been a big fan of watching you all go over the past few weeks. It's been really fun to watch, listen. I sing your guys' praise all the time. It's probably the highlight of my Wednesday nights on the esports side. So really excited to be part of it with y'all tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and where you've come from. But let's start with Stay Plugged In. You found your way to Stay Plugged In and Stay Plus and the things that you've been cooking there. But love to hear about your involvement with Stay Plugged In and the Players League.
Yeah, so Stay Plugged In came about really because I had an education background and I had a vision of where we were really going to go with it. You know, my background, like I said, initially was in education. I grew up with this very much love for teaching, being involved in the classroom. I was involved with esports and starting after school activities back when esports was still, you know, under the microscope as a very small, very early on thing. And that kind of blossomed into this big interest in trying to bring it into the classroom. I have my master's in teaching and education. I have a specialization in instructional design. And really, I connected really well with a lot of the Stay Plugged In staff and kind of what their goals were for esports. You know, we do amazing broadcasts with Madden and helping students find recruiting opportunities, but really to be able to give something to high schools, middle schools, even elementary schoolers that can get them to learn some of these workforce opportunities is absolutely incredible. And if you can put something that they're doing on their day-to-day like esports into that in video games, like it's a win-win for the students, it's a win-win for our community and for our next generation. And I think Stay Plugged In and Stay Plus really want to connect with that.
Yeah, Monkey Man, you've got a little ones at home as well that get to kind of see this esports thing grow firsthand.
Yeah, you say little one, but they're 14 now. They're gonna be 15 in November, so yeah, they're blossoming very quickly. Actually, she's in middle school, and so getting to see how that actually came from the fact that this school, it was over the Panhandle in West Virginia. They went to a tech expo in Northern Virginia, and they decided to bring some of that home. And then they decided, you know what, let's build this up kind of as a a starter kit program. Let's see if we can get some of these kids involved. There's a very mixed community over here, and it felt like they were able to utilize it not just to introduce, but also to kind of, all the opportunities, maybe even careers, but also as a way to kind of get kids incentivized. Sometimes it walks different legs of life. They can be in different, demographics, and it allows them to be like, you know what, there is something that still is here as well for you to find that community, as well as kind of getting that teacher's trust. Have you seen some of that growth as well for some of these kids? Maybe they see it as a STEM pathway, but some of them just helps them enjoy school, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. That's really what it comes down to, is giving them reasons to be in the classroom. When COVID happened and remote learning happened, I think there was this disconnect for students coming back to the classroom, and easing that transition in was extremely difficult for educators and admin alike. So being able to have opportunities for things that will have students want to return to the classroom and build better relationships with their teachers outside of just being in a traditional classroom space is something that's just really needed. Absenteeism since COVID has gone through the roof. So being able to kind of come in and have something after school that makes students feel like, hey, I want to go to school because I have this STEM commitment, I have this matting commitment after school that I really want to be a part of. And it's kind of like, sneaking the medicine into the food a tiny bit now and then of, putting in some of the, yes, very fun STEM and very Madden portions, but also they're learning skills that they ultimately will be able to use beyond just this. And I think that's really, great to have something that they really love and something that they're really going to learn from.
And so during that time frame, right, when we talk about COVID, I believe at that point in time, were you with Quinnipiac University at that point in time? I know you've had history as an educator and then as collegiate leader too. So walk us through a little bit about that timeline and what you were involved with.
Yeah, so I ended up going to Quinnipiac University, located in Hamden, Connecticut. People might not know Hamden, but 15 minutes outside of New Haven, which is where Yale's at. But I ended up going there, really well-known hockey school. But what I learned very quickly is that they really wanted to get involved in esports. They had a really cool game club back then. This was back in probably 2017, 2018. So they were just starting out. And this ultimately led to them kind of wanting to go further into the competitive esports scene. They had a very good local community, but they wanted to compete in different regions. And their conference, which was the MAC conference, was very heavily involved in wanting to compete and have esports championships. So very quickly, we were invited to join that for their esports. Our president signed a contract without asking anyone. But it ended up being the best thing ever for us. We got involved in the MAC very quickly. At first, I was actually really hesitant because it was going into my senior year. And honestly, I wanted to just lay back, relax, just get by with the semester, enjoy my last couple of semesters of college. But at the time, no one really wanted to jump at that opportunity because it was a lot of workload. So back then I was still very much a yes man. I still think I'm a yes man sometimes now. But I hopped into it and the team had a lot of incredible success. We ended up winning the MAC Conference Championship my graduate year, which was actually held in Atlantic City. So we got to go to Atlantic City, compete on the Atlantic City boardwalk, which was absolutely amazing. I also, as a student, got to help design our first esports facility. So I basically got a huge hand in that, in basically cementing what I would say is a legacy for me, at least, in collegiate esports at Quinnipiac University. And, who doesn't love that? The thing about esports is it's another opportunity for people to cement their legacies at schools. And I think that's a really big thing we're seeing more and more with a lot of colleges, is that they want to showcase those individual students and individual student accomplishments. So I think, between being able to have the players shown on a Twitter, a Facebook, a social media, to them actually working behind the scenes, making those social media posts and showing them off that way. I think it's really cool that esports is allowing people to show that legacy, similar to what Quinnipiac did for me.
Absolutely. And then you made your way over to Huntington. We'll get into that in a little bit too, but you also started out in the competitive scene a little bit. You used to compete in Smash. I think recently you've competed in some Smash tournaments. Obviously maybe not in your prime yet. Can you give us some insight in that competitive world?
Yeah, it'll actually surprise people. I think I'm the highest ranked I've ever been in Smash now, after all these years.
Let's go.
So,
Wow, okay.
yeah,
Let's
so
go.
still have a bit of gaming time. But yeah, I started competing in Smash Brawl back on the Wii. That was back, 2014 probably. So right before Smash 4 for the Wii U came out. Transition to that, I was a marching band kid, so I didn't really have a ton going on outside of marching band, but Smash was a really cool opportunity. I think my first tournament, I lived in Atlanta at the time, was a coffee shop that was maybe the quarter of the size of your traditional coffee chain, and basically there were 75 people. There were 4 setups, 75 people, and like quarter of the size of a regular coffee chain. If you weren't playing, you were basically sitting outside on the curb waiting for your match to be called to go back inside. And that was my first event. My parents didn't want to take me, so I made my grandparents do it. And ever since then, I've been hooked. I now compete in the Chattanooga Smash scene. I'm currently ranked 6th in Chattanooga here right now. Probably won't be ranked that in a couple of weeks anymore. I've had a rough season, but overall, I'll actually be at ETSU, has ETSU Con next weekend. So I'll actually be there competing too. So still traveling around competing right now.
Wow, so I immediately have 2 questions because you left us literally hanging. 1, you're a band kid. What was your instrument? 2, who is your main, since you're apparently one of the best in your region? I gotta know. Come on.
Okay, I love all band kids, but I was one of the cool kids. I was on drumline.
Okay, all right. That's you're popping the collar a little bit there.
Yeah. So I'll say I'm one of the cool kids. And as far as Smash, I would say I'm one of the lame kids. I'm more of a Ness main myself right now.
Okay, that's not bad. That's old school. I don't mind that. Look, I thought you were gonna say something like you're hitting up like a Steve, or if you're going into one of the DLC characters, we would have had to kick you off the stream for that.
If I could play Steve, I would. I won't lie.
Because you win if you're good with Steve. If you're not good with Steve, you absolutely get demolished, I do specifically. But then we talk about like Madden, for example, where you're just absolutely, we got a bone to pick with him. Madden, because you've been beating up on some kids. What's that all about, man?
I have my own kid in my life, and I'll tell you, I don't go easy on her either. It's you've got to earn everything you've got. I was talking about with somebody else from Stay Plugged In earlier today. The best weapons get made with some hot lava and hot burning, and they're gonna take it and they're gonna get better. I've had students reach out to me since then, actually asking for tips and advice. Wow. So I've been delivering on helping them. I promise that I help them after the fact, but in the moment, yeah, I'm gonna try to win.
Okay, all right, Mr. Purple's doing a seminar on some good old Madden. Okay, so your hands are rated E for everyone, including students, and so you bring that to the table. You obviously that drives that immediate connection, because we try to have like authority figures and educators. They want to kind of have an ability to connect, while also having that Mr. and Mrs. style respect. But it does showcase that if they're immediately reaching out, like you did something that they want to do every single day, and they realize, oh my gosh, teachers are real people. Does that link really kind of embolden and really brighten the day for these students as they get to talk to their teachers as if they have a commonality between them?
I think it does, and I think also something that you all have probably noticed in some of these Madden broadcasts, there is a very massive skill range in terms of players in Madden in general, but also in Players League specifically. So there are some players that I know this is their probably first time ever picking up the game even. And some of them do really well considering it's their first time playing. The players that were actually asking for coaching advice afterwards that you saw on stream last week, they actually improved a lot over the course of just playing that game. It might not have shown in the final score, but I was thoroughly impressed by how some of them were adapting very quickly. And, they're all ultimately gamers. They maybe play League of Legends, Valorant. I know a lot of them play Fortnite, actually. A lot of those Green Bay kids are top Fortnite players in Green Bay.
Oh, wow.
A very large amount of them. They are all gamers, and they are beginning to understand that Madden isn't just a football game. It is a regular video game like any other, and they can build and adapt on that. So I think they see that very quickly, and they just see me at that point as another player and someone who has experience, and probably a bit less intimidating than some of those really good players in their region, especially if they're not at the same school as them, to be like, hey, I don't know if I can ask this guy for advice. He's from the other region. Technically, they're a competitor. So to have me as kind of a neutral ground, I think that really helps them know who they can go to for some advice outside of just each other.
I was just about to ask that, honestly, if you don't mind, Monkey Man, because
for it.
if I was getting advice from anybody in the Players League, it would be King Mode, which I hear you're about to play, by the way. We're going to get to see a little bit about that matchup next week. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you should see a Justin versus King Mode matchup next week. Who knows how it's going to go, but I don't think it'll be the same story as what you've seen.
See, we're talking about that matchup, but there's actually a premium matchup that still needs to happen, and someone is trying to actually run away from it. Look, with all the pedigree, with all the resume that just got seen, Bear, I understand why you've been scaring yourself away from this matchup. What? Come on, when's it gonna happen? Who are you gonna pick? Come on.
I haven't played since like 2004 when
Yeah,
Bit
you're
was in
ready.
the game. All right, I gotta warm up a little bit. Give me some time. All right, listen, I am going to make this match happen, Justin. But it's not gonna be pretty. You're gonna smack me around like you smacked everybody else around, apparently. But I'm up for the challenge. I will never stray away from a challenge. So listen, Justin, I'm for it. What are we playing?
Honestly, maybe the solution is a good in between. We go with Madden 09 for the Nintendo Wii. We have to actually drop back like a quarterback.
Oh
I think
my
you could be on board with
Yes.
that one.
Yeah, I could definitely do it.
That'd be great. Oh my gosh.
I'm
okay.
on it.
Now wait, I need to know, what team will you not pick? What is your least favorite team to have to go in with? Like, are you an anti-Raiders fan? I gotta know, who's your high, who's your low? What's that range for you in Madden?
I mean, for me, I am a diehard Eagles fan. I'm coming off a high of a recent Super
Birds.
Bowl win. I was actually in Philly for the NFC Championship against Washington.
Wow.
Amazing
Let's
game and
go.
experience.
Yeah.
But I'm not picking Dallas ever. I'll be a Giants fan. I'll be a Commanders fan. I'll be a fan of every other team in that league. Dallas, you'll never see me playing.
Yeah, you would pick my Panthers before you would pick Dallas, I can imagine.
Yep, you're right.
We're not great these years, but listen, we'll get past it. I do want to ask, we'll bring it back to STEM at the end of the day. Obviously, competition's fun, and actually it applies to Madden too. I wanted to know, you set the bar high for these players as far as like gaming goes and the Madden side. Same expectations for the STEM side, I guess.
Is
that accurate?
I think I have high expectations, but at the same time, I think a lot more about where I started with these kinds of skills, because once again, very large range of skill levels among all of these students. And I know some schools kind of have a type of what I would call an advantage, and that some of them have done some video editing before, for example. So for me, I think I have to take all of these students as if they are complete, newbies, basically, who have not experienced this at all before. Even if they have a bit of video editing experience, and kind of be like, hey, I need to make sure that everything's taught to a level that supports everyone. I'm making the student who might have experience in something like CapCut, I'm going to act like with DaVinci Resolve, they're starting at the ground level, and I'm going to teach them the same way as I would a ground level student. And at the end of the day, these students aren't going to make a commercial that's going to be in the Super Bowl next year when the Eagles win again. It's going to be, these nice, easygoing commercials that I think are going to be really fun and are going to really play well on Brightspeed. I think it's going to really play well on gaming. And I think it's just going to showcase what I hope is a really fun time for them.
I'm going to ignore the second Super Bowl in the row. Only because like Saquon's there, so I actually might not doubt that might be the case. All right, I'll give that to you. Let's talk State Plus. You're part of the State Plugged In platform now. You mentioned it briefly, but I'd love to kind of see from your perspective what you've been working on and some of your favorite highlights from what they offer.
Yeah, so Stay Plus is such an amazing group of services, from being able to offer build outs on campuses, especially for high schools and middle schoolers, to possibly have gaming computers and access to gaming equipment in their space, to this education programming aspect. What I've seen with a lot of schools right now is they really want to have esports, but they might not necessarily know exactly where to get the funds for that. And with that, we help connect schools with grant writers, help them find ways to get funding. But also, something that really opens up those doors is this programming aspect for things like Players League that has both that esports and that STEM aspect. Because when you open up the world and say, hey, we're going to be using this space every day because you're going to have classes happening in here. We're going to use it after school because you have esports and additional learning for things like content creation in here. If you can show that a classroom space is going to be used all day long, if you have this high grade gaming equipment, the sky's the limit. And I think with Stay Plus, we're really empowering that both for not only schools, but also different areas as well. We recently just finished up a project with Florence Parks and Rec, where we actually had them make comic books using AI. So each week we taught them about, different areas within storytelling and story creation. We taught them what it takes to make a comic book, and then they used AI to kind of help start generating their own comic book. I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to be out in Southwest Guilford and High Point in a couple weeks doing the same exact things with middle schools out there. So we have those going on. We have aviation industry days. So we're working with a ton of different groups to help bring, drone piloting, flight sims into a ton of different educational spaces and giving students a unique experience there. Same with health sciences. We're doing the same exact thing, health science industry days. There's a ton of different ways that we're ultimately getting involved. And on top of that, I know we have F1 going along with that all at the same time. So, there's a ton going on with Stay Plus and a ton going on both educationally and also building out some amazing facilities for some amazing schools.
Yeah. You getting in on the flight, Hill Monkey Man? Are you learning how to fly a plane?
I stopped at that whenever I think it was Earth Sim, and then they went to Flight Simulator, and I was like, wow, these people are not going to survive if I'm at the helm. I need to know. So from some of these students, they come in, they won't always have the technology, and knowing that you've been able to kind of open up to either someone's a newbie, someone has some average experience coming into this. Have you had any students either just be shocked and awed, but now maybe come back to you and say, hey, I would love to do XYZ thing with some of this, be it the content creation side, maybe even another project. Has anything like that from the student body had already kind of manifested from now them being exposed to what maybe they didn't have before?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely saw that with the aviation days we've done in the past. I think over 2/3 of those students said they were talking about being a pilot afterwards or being involved somewhere in the aviation industry. So, we're seeing a large amount of students there, instantly walk away from, one day and they're like, I should really be looking at this career field because,
That's cool.
Especially nowadays, aviation has so many openings and so much that people can do in aviation. And I think some students just don't know that. They don't know what's out there. Same with content creation. We've had colleges come in and talk to students throughout Players League about, hey, you can come here and you can work on the content side. You can be, you can be the next Bear, for example, and come out here and do some broadcasting, you do some video editing, you do some graphic design. There's a lot of opportunities out there for colleges too. I have one student from when I worked at Huntington College that he's now in charge of all the social media for this whole sports department. He came for esports. Wow. And now he oversees all the social media for the sports department. So there's a ton of opportunities out there that students, I think, once you start explaining to them, hey, there's people out here who can tell them this that aren't just the first person off the street, it really adds up.
Nice.
Love it, 100%. And listen, I've seen examples of that as well. When we saw high schools that I've talked to that, they were supporting the broadcast for the esports side, but then they needed somebody to be able to record for their traditional sports arenas. So that's mega cool too. You mentioned Huntington College, and I'd love to hear about it because they're doing big things in Alabama, probably leading the charge down in that state. So I'd love to learn a little bit about, the benefits of maybe a dedicated room, because I know you're a big part of building that beautiful arena that you see at Huntington.
Yeah, so Huntington College was really awesome in that when I came in, my first interview, they took me into this very large room and they said, can this work for esports? And it was kind of like a moment where I looked around and I was like, heck yeah, it's gonna work. I mean, there's no way this isn't gonna work. I was like, they didn't take me to a classroom. They took me into a 286 person theater. They took me into this huge, large space and said, can this work? And they gave me a year to build out the program too.
Wow.
So I had a whole year before I even had a team to be able to recruit, talk to students on campus, build this facility space. they did it justice. There's programs out there that start where basically it's like day one, you have to make it work. But they took the time to kind of let this progress and let it keep going. And, Huntington has been thriving now. I think this coming fall, they're expecting somewhere between 40 to 45 students in their program. They're fielding up to 25 different games, I think.
Wow.
And I know on top of this, they already have a new practice room that I built with them right before I left. They just got announced that they're going to open another practice room. And I know they just started an esports minor that's coming in the fall.
I just
Holy
spoke.
cow.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just spoke to 2 individuals from the Stay Plugged In platform who got recruited to go to Huntington. So I got them on an interview. You'll see those on the Stay Plugged In socials coming up too. It's crazy the growth that we've seen there, man.
Yeah, no, it's very impressive.
So, seeing the theaters also getting used in that same regard. I know the thespians out there are like, oh, you're ruining what this is supposed to be for. But no, it's getting them ready for what could also be literally that next stage, because they could be going from the online environment into physical championship environment. It really drives kind of the identity with it. I know that it's kind of maybe a cliche, like, hey, you put on the t-shirt and you start believing, but it really does feel like that's exactly what that is. And I'm so happy you were given time, because when I've seen some of these, maybe, the high Div 1 style schools, they're like, yo, we've got $1 bazillion. Here's 2 cents, maybe 1 extra nickel. Make it work, be instantly successful. But you're seeing from kind of that medium ground, the ability to actually work and then have time to do so. Feels like that's a huge boon. Time and the ability to develop really kind of gives you that chance.
Yeah, and I think we see that a lot across, everyone involved on the Stay Plugged In platform for esports and beyond. Like, all of these schools nowadays, they're getting the investment, they're getting the time, they're getting buy-in. Before, very early on, collegiate esports was kind of seen as like a, hey, here, like you said, it's kind of your nickel and dime, and you figure it out and you make it happen, and the students take it from there and do an amazing job with it. But now you're actually seeing that these students don't have to do it all anymore. They can actually be players. And then being a manager or being involved in social media is just the icing on top if they want to do that. Before, they just had to do it, and now they kind of have the choice, which I think, is a really cool area of flexibility. And that comes with these facility spaces too. It gives students a lot more opportunities for those hands-on workforce experiences. And, I think we're seeing that at the high school level too, with the facilities we're building out as well.
That's right, with Spin Labs. I've been a major part of being able to have that conversation, spark a conversation about exactly this. And the things that Stay Plugged In has been able to put together, it's truly a special moment, no matter what type of space, right? That's a middle school, that Annie Fisher one that you just saw, Science Lab converted into it for the purpose of purposeful play, for hands-on experience that you get through esports. Same with gyms. You see in this picture specifically, the production studio that's there front and center, right below that sign that lights up and really gives that ambiance that you love as an esports player. So all of these activations are happening right now because of Stay Plus and those Stay Plugged In labs, Justin.
Yeah, no, and these have all been absolutely integral in being able to run programming too. Annie Fisher, we actually did a program with them called CT Cup last semester, where we had them doing content creation as well, and they were making their own highlight reels of some of their gameplay from their esports teams matches. And, they were able to, walk away, and we treated it as a kind of award. We actually gave out prizing for that too. So they actually won some cash prizes for being involved in that. And, it kind of, is deserving. They're putting on work and doing things for their school that their school would love to be able to use for their own content. So, we're showing them that this is really something that they can be involved in long term. And if you show them it at the middle school level, they'll stick with it, because once you get to high school, a lot of students start getting that after school job. A lot of students start having those other things going on, or thinking about college. With Players League, we're very grateful to have the students that we have involved taking that time to be able to learn these skills. But if we're hitting students at middle school levels too, the opportunities are endless, because if they know what they want to do going into 9th grade and they really want to be a great video editor, they have plenty of time when they get to the high school level to really prove and improve on that.
Bro, I'm so jealous. We thought it was cool whenever we were in high school and you turned off the lights in the computer lab, and you got to either play on spreadsheets and do the macros, or to be able to just play Galaxy Pinball. And they get to have all that. That is amazing. It really drives home how much development has been going on. So, hey, Bear, I can't say more to that. That's just great.
It's truly special in the eyes of these students too. I've been able to talk to them first and foremost as a student representative. So they're loving it, man. And it all goes into just what they can do with their future, whether it be college be their next step, or whether it be, just going straight into the workforce. Some students might find that that's the right pathway. And the cool thing about Stay Plugged In is you can go through the recruiting platform and find a great college like Huntington that we've been able to establish there, or have the tools that you need from Players League to learn the skills that you need to just go do it on your own, right? There's just so many ways that you can approach this, and that's what I've loved. Or if you're a student and classes are over and you're looking to keep yourself busy during the summertime, Justin, we've got that covered too.
Yeah, and with that, we're really working on our summer camp programming outreach right now. We just started talking in schools a couple weeks ago and talking to Parks and Recs, Boys and Girls Clubs, even colleges that want to bring high schoolers in. We've been offering such an amazing summer camp opportunity where students are doing project-based learning. So they're getting involved in content creation like you see in Players League with games like Rocket League, Fortnite, Roblox, the AI comic books, the aviation, drones, and Microsoft Flight Sim. And on top of that, something that I think that we do that's just very different than a lot of programs you may see that, might kind of fit this mold is our ability to offer a virtual instructor, kind of like what I do for Players League, where I am virtually teaching these students each week. A lot of these programs, have the option where basically, here's the curriculum, here's the camp, here's a program online, now the educator has to go learn it, do it themselves. But the ability that we have to bring in a virtual educator who kind of avoids the teacher having to put in those painstaking hours of having to learn a whole curriculum and learning how to use the tech themselves, is something that is really cool, really encouraging. We already have quite a few programs coming out right now. We have some in Massachusetts and New York we can't share all the details on yet, but we actually have an event in North Carolina at Summit Summer in Winston-Salem. We'll actually be doing a multi-field camp there. Well, you'll see it all. You'll see the content creation. You'll see the AI. You'll see the aviation. So, there's a lot of opportunities similar to that that's going to be, coming down the pipeline very soon. And we're, excited to connect about more summer camps and excited to share more about the ones we currently have developing soon.
That's exciting. I've got to run, and I was personally teaching about the casting side of things here with Stay Plugged In too. So I appreciate y'all getting me involved. It was last summer that I was able to really teach them about the basics of streaming, but also being able to be a broadcaster. What opportunities do you look for when you are a caster? What equipment do you need in order to sound like this? Because my voice doesn't normally sound as good, I promise. Right? You can kind of up your game a little bit from time to time, but you get the skills necessary, like real skills that you actually will use, which is a cool thing about these summer camps, no doubt about it. Monkey Man, what part of that program would you be most interested in?
Oh, okay. For just getting through all of that, I feel like when you're looking at the content creation side, that's really cool. I feel like that's much more outside of my wheelhouse because inside of me is just a nerd that wants to be. Seeing what you can do from, actually making the nitty gritty kind of development of games is huge. I love that at minimum, it gets people kind of together. I know that there's a lot of separation that we kind of drive, especially in a digital space, but knowing the fact that you have to work in a multifaceted and multi-person project is actually one of the toughest things to have to deal with. I despised when I was in college having to deal with group projects because you always had one person slacking. Well, at the summer camps, you ain't gonna be slacking. You're there for a reason. You're gonna be going and getting the programming done or being able to create something new. And I feel like that is the human element along with all of the STEM element that has to find that real connection. And it does motivate you when you realize, wow, I cannot hide. I cannot run. I must do my work here and now, especially for these summer programs.
Hands-on, one-on-one experience. I absolutely love it. And if you're getting really excited about this type of conversation, how can I prepare for the future while also having a ton of fun? You can do that through other activations, not just Players League. You mentioned Formula STEM Esports Cup. That's also coming up just around the corner. So just the activations, and you mentioned it best, outside of just being a driver specifically. There are so many jobs, Justin, that go into Formula STEM, and you get to learn that through this activation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone wants to, kind of enjoy being a race car driver, but at the same time, what's the end goal for that? Ultimately, it's to show that there are a ton of end goals. You can be an engineer, you can be part of that pit crew, you can be part of the management team that makes sure that everything's getting from site to site someone's got to get that car to where it needs to be. And I promise you, it's not by driving that car on the highways or on the back roads to get it there. So, it's all of those different jobs that are involved in what it takes to make a crew happen in F1 that really is something that students can get into in a variety of roles. They need a content creator, a marketer for social media, just like anybody else does. So there's a ton of opportunities in F1 that go beyond just being the driver. And it's really showing those students that if you want to be involved in the world in the F1, it might be a bit easier than you think.
I mean,
I love doing the pit crew challenges whenever I go to races.
Oh my gosh.
Monkey Man, were you a fan of that too?
I got to see a lot of those, and honestly, when you see how they're like chasing each other down as like a 30-man team doing the world record race, the who can do it the fastest. Oh my gosh,
yeah.
that's so cool. I personally, when it comes to like all sports in general, to include F1, it's the analyst who's also off to the side taking all the stats and consuming.
Yes.
All right, what took longer to do? Put the wheels on, to be able to check the spokes, be able to get refueled. You do that as well when it comes to Madden. All right, how high was his jump? How fast did he run? And it really breaks down to their scores as a statistical element in the game as well as on the field. And we see that intermixing of that technology all over the sidelines when it's the NFL or when you're literally just playing the game and you have someone that can run faster than another guy. It's such a cool execution to be able to see that all together.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just thinking of examples like, pit stop strategy, tire strategy, bringing in soft tires versus hard tires. Like, these are all things that really come into play, and the analysts are all about that. So another great way to get involved, and that's if you go to racing.staypluggedin.com and get registered today, because it starts next week. So you don't have to wait until summertime for this one. You can go ahead and get active, get going right now. Again, that is racing.staypluggedin.com for the Formula STEM Esports Cup. And join us it'll be the preseason next week. We'll have a broadcast for that, by the way. That's happening and going down on Tuesday. So you'll get to see a sneak peek of some of the testing sessions that will happen. Eventually, it'll be on Thursdays, but it'll be this Tuesday just so we can showcase all of that taking place at the same time. So definitely don't want to miss out on that. Let's get down to business, boys. All right, it is time. Let's go ahead and talk about the Players League and what we've done so far to this point. Right now, STEM program overview. We'll check out exactly what's going on with this program. Justin, I'll leave this to you as it's your specialty.
Yeah, so the Players League is being brought to you also by Brightspeed Fiber Internet, and we're really going through this STEM education of content creation and teaching students all of these, like I said, workforce development skills. This is basically going over the course of 10 weeks, so we started probably a week or two before esports started. We'll go a week or two after esports is over, just covering a ton of different content, from storyboarding to filming to video editing. And this ultimately leads to making a Brightspeed advertisement at the end of all of this. So, they had a chance to, meet with the client, meet with Brightspeed, have those conversations. I've also kind of served as a client liaison, giving in some thoughts and opinions on that and helping students kind of conceptualize their idea. But also, along with all this, the students are learning about different careers each week, whether that's learning about being a video editor, whether that's learning about being a storyboard artist, whether it's about being a videographer. There's a lot of different roles that go into this, and showing students what all those roles are an absolutely huge part of this. And we bring in guest speakers all the time too, from NFL players to bringing in directors of esports at schools, to really be able to cover the spectrum of where these outcomes and these skills can take you. So there's a lot going on here that's really gonna show student talent, from the Madden streams to the STEM streams to being able to show these final products and put them on the big stage. I know Brightspeed has some heavy hitters coming in to look over these videos. They're very excited about this. It feels very real, very authentic. And I think that really adds to the value to what the students are getting out of this.
If you want to be successful, you can learn from somebody who's had success, and no better than Monkey Man. You might recognize this name. How about Green Bay's all-time leading rusher, Amon Green, being such an integral part of this program? And there's plenty more too.
You know, I think I used him as one of my primary rushers on like the Super Nintendo. So shout out to Mon Green, just consistently not only being involved on the field, but as well as making sure that that pathway exists and has been able to be spiritedly cheered on. Bear, being able to have that connection from people that literally have walked onto the gridiron, seen the field, but then also recognize that as much as their personality, their performance, and the way that they shape their craft is huge, it's exactly the same for everyone that walks around them. Because we look at the NFL, we look at Madden, we look at everything that happens, and there is such a support cell of so many things occurring to get advertisements, to get people to, you know, be healthy. Because you have like the sports scientists, and you have, you know, they're like, you know what, you're not exactly running as fast as what was going on before. What's all that about? And they keep everything up to date. So really love that we've gotten the students involved, and even from the commercial pathway, because, you know, so much of that really resonates with what we do in just common everyday sports.
It's absolutely accurate. And let's see what we're doing in the Players League specifically, starting with week 1, where we kick things off. And first, you got to learn about the projects, right, Justin? You can't just dive in cold turkey. You need to learn a little bit about what's going on with it, including like, hey, let's get a little bit of inspiration there too. So walk us through what it was like getting to meet the students for the first time and their first reactions to the program.
Yeah, the students were very thrilled to be there, honestly. Like, the excitement was palpable even over a screen camera. But they kind of came in with this, you know, understanding that, you know, they're going to be doing a bit with video editing. That's really what they came in and knew they were going to do. But what they didn't know was understanding that beginning to end process. And one of the big things that we really talked about was, like, in order to get started, you got to take those baby steps. You got to start with storyboarding and be able to kind of map out what you really want to work on, what you really want to do for this commercial. And you can't make a storyboard for a commercial for a company without understanding the company's perspective. So we actually took some time to kind of review what Brightspeed's done in the past commercial-wise. You know, I told them, you're not going to make it just like how Brightspeed does. It's never going to be as good as those, you know, high-quality companies. But it can be, you know, something that kind of fits that similar theming. And that's something we really wanted to touch on with our students is, hey, this is basically your first introduction to the client. These commercials should help guide you in your storyboard process.
Well, oh, go ahead. No, you first.
I was going to ask, because
go.
I immediately wanted to know, because I'm one of those kids that I was told to write a paper, but you need to have an outline and you need to follow these initial steps. I was like, no, let me write the paper. Did you have any students you had to rein in and be like, hey, start the process at the beginning and frame this? Because it feels like so many of the students, with the way they were excited, the way you described, just wanted to immediately jump in and start just kind of recording their commercials.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I mean, for the students, honestly, I think most of them understood it. I think some of them were a bit hesitant at first because they were worried about the drawing aspect. You know, they were like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do here? Like, you know, they're gamers, they're great, they're creative, but, you know, some of them might not be the best drawers at times. But I think it was important to kind of emphasize like, this shouldn't be the intimidating factor of it. You know, as long as you're flowing with creative ideas, I'm not worried about the drawing. I don't think they're worried about the drawing at Brightspeed. As long as you get a product together that's good at the end of the day, that's great. So for them, you know, once they got the drawing, understood that they didn't have to be perfect artists. They didn't have to, you know, make the next Mona Lisa. I think they finally brought it together a bit, and, you know, that made it a lot easier on them.
Well, we actually have an example of the commercial you showed them, which is a Mona Lisa in my eyes. Mwah. So let's check out exactly the example that they put together that you showed the students.
Come on. Before I switched to Brightspeed fiber internet, things like slow speeds and random dead spots really brought out the troll in me. I mean, I spent hours causing trouble. But then I switched to Brightspeed's fast, reliable fiber internet, and the rest is sunshine and unicorns. Looks amazing, Barbara.
Ultra-fast, Brightspeed fiber internet. Switch to the bright side.
Sometimes you see commercials on TV. First of all, that was great. But sometimes you'll see these commercials on TV and you like don't think about all the things that go behind the scenes in order to make something that's even just 30 seconds come to life like that.
there was actually one thing that I think it feels goes underappreciated, because you have the tech, you have the shot, you have like the story that you're going to go behind it, but even more, like how we talk about it takes team composition, there's a voice actor that's also delivering lines to all of that too. So there's so much of a message that has to be conveyed, and I think using that solid commercial is exactly like a good starting point for everyone to kind of understand what they got to do.
Yeah, that one I also had to stop the students from being scary and telling them, hey, we're not going to animate an actual troll into your commercials. I was like, you can 100% act them out humanistically if you want, but don't stress as if we're about to, teach you this amazing skill of being able to have those animated characters in the commercials. I was like, if you know how to do that already, good for you. Don't need it here. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, well, some of the students are internet trolls already, so listen, they can play off it as it anyways. I'm just playing, of course, having a fun time. But then they got to learn the storyboard basics in addition to that, right? So how do you put together a story from start to finish? How do you draw it out so that way you know step by step exactly what you're filming? So that's an important part of this too. And in fact, we have an example storyboard here that we'd love for you to kind of walk us through, Justin, and show us just an example of how you do educate.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talked about storyboard artists early on with the students and talked about this job, we told them it's important to keep in mind that, yes, for this project, you're making the storyboard and then executing the storyboard. But in many situations, the storyboard artist is not the same person that's ultimately recording and filming this actually on a set. So for this, I told them, keep that in mind when you're doing this. But ultimately, the storyboard consists of, having these panels, being able to see in an image what the exact shot should look like. So we talked about different shots. So we talked about the wide shots. We talked about the close-ups. We've talked about a ton of different shots. We talked about pans and tilts, those action shots as well. And being like, hey, now you know all of these different types of shots. Go ahead and execute on some of them. Include some of these shots in your work. But also keep in mind in those lower blurbs that you want to make sure that we're covering what is happening in those shots, so that you don't just see a picture and say, hey, it's just taking a picture. There's no video or movement in this. Describing that movement, describing any action shot movement there might also be as well. Are these really important elements that if you are going to hand the storyboard off to someone, that they should be able to execute on without a lot of help or assistance? Obviously you go back and forth and make some changes as need be. But ultimately, I told them this storyboard should be something that maybe you work on and maybe you hand off to your teacher afterwards. Your teacher should be able to film it based off of what they see.
Ooh. Actually fairly smart. Yeah, actually my daughter does a lot of storyboarding, not for video, but actually she's been going into animation. She does it for a lot of manga, that she wants to be a comic book artist and be able to do a lot of the same. So that same skill transcends to multiple mediums, which is a really cool thing to be able to get. And she's also said that no matter what pan, tilt, or camera angle, my forehead will only be gigantic. So that's definitely something that I've come to terms with.
I've got that one too, don't worry.
Y'all's big brains. I can't hang. Let's go to week 2 and see what the students put together for week 2. Again, just behind the scenes, what happens, what takes place. Storyboard artists and script writers need to take place there too. Camera and storyboard reviews too. They get their first taste of, here's some feedback. Let's put this into action, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is kind of a very important part of the week and of the weeks throughout this process is some weeks, I'm there talking for 30 minutes or so, but some weeks it's really like, hey, I've taught this, it's your turn to execute. And that's what this week basically was, hey, you know how to make your storyboard now. Now it's your job to go out there and do that. I'm here if you have questions. But ultimately, it's in your hands now. Take this time to get the work done and make a storyboard in your own way without my input.
I need to know how, because this is also a life skill that kind of gets brought into it. Some people and students don't receive criticism and feedback very well. Was there any major difficulty about trying to kind of massage the message that some of these would-be students and players are trying to be able to kind of define what they want to do? I feel like as students, generally you kind of look to your adult authority figure and you're like, okay, yeah, this is good. But did you receive any kind of backlash, like hard nose, like, no, this is gonna be great. This is firm, and it feels like that does end up being a difficulty at times, especially kind of into the educator realm.
It's very interesting. I expected that. I didn't really get it.
Okay.
These students did a pretty good job from the get-go of not really needing a lot of feedback. I don't think I give any feedback actually on creative ideas. I think all of their creative ideas were actually extremely sound, which I was impressed by. Almost everyone was like right on the ball, on the money with it, as far as the creative ideas go. Now I might be like, hey, you need a couple more panels here. Hey, you might have too many panels here. Hey, you need to tell me what this shot is. I have no idea what I'm looking at in this picture sometimes. Which, hey, some drawings need a tiny bit of work and a tiny bit of love. I can tell when someone didn't necessarily try as hard as I know they could. If you can draw a stick figure, you can make it work. But if I can't even tell that stick figure has all the body parts, there's a bit of a disconnect there. But, you know, overall, I think they did a really good job, and they took criticism really well too and implemented those very easily. So, you know, overall, it's been a great group of students in terms of taking that feedback.
That puts my mind to ease, because that's all I can draw is stick figures, I'll be honest with you. So, but listen, we moved on to week 3 as well, where we got to see that feedback put into action, like we mentioned. But you never, you know, just like in a job environment, you never really get to rest, right? You know, obviously you want to take breaks. That's important for the mental. But what I'm trying to get at is you're going to have to multitask at some point. So you're not only just recreating the storyboards, but now you're being introduced to video editing basics, the techniques that go into that, you know, using certain techniques in order to put something together. So that's when the fun in my eyes goes to, because I've always been a fan of film. So this part got me excited, Justin.
Yeah, and I think this part gets a lot of students excited too, because you actually get to kind of act out. You get to move around a bit more. It's not just writing. You know, being able to have the hands-on camera practice is absolutely great. But also being able to teach students a few skills and a few settings they don't know that their phone has. You know, the automatic HDR settings that you actually have to toggle on your phone to get those turned on, for example. You know, a lot of students are like, I didn't know that existed. So kind of walking students through, you know, what their technology is capable of, and seeing students have an eye-opening moment where they learn a new thing about their own piece of technology that, you know, a lot of us will say that these students know everything about their tech. You know, they still are learning a thing or two about their devices that they're using every single day. And same with video editing. Like I said, some of those students have some experience, some had no experience at all. So being able to start teaching students, hey, here's some video editing tools that you can use. Here's some basics. You know, maybe you've used one software before, but you haven't used this software. So see what the comparison and difference is between the different softwares, because I think we all know video editing software, there's a lot of people in that space right now. So helping students figure out, you know, those comparisons is really big. And ultimately that allows them to start getting their raw footage, start their filming, and hopefully start doing their video editing too.
I learn every day that I'm using my phone wrong. I am told all the time that I do not know. I literally just, what was it, about 2 months ago, realized that you could take a video at like 60 FPS and it looks so crispy. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I just learned what 4K was. Boom, mind blown. So, and that actually resonates the same way, because there, like in cybersecurity field, you have to consistently keep your certification up. You have to keep learning, and you have so many pieces of software and programs overall that define the security space for the editing space as well. It's like, all right, you know, you've used Sony Vegas. Well, that's super cool. We're using Premiere over here, so get with the times. Like, be able to kind of go between all of that and having software licenses. So it's neat that, you know, they're already recognizing, all right, this, you get your small sample, you know, and you may not even use this at your next level, which means you have to consistently turn the cogs and gears to get ready to learn some more.
Yep, 100%. And then you have to bring it to life, right? You have this story in front of you. Now you learn all the techniques. Let's put it to good use. And in week 4, they got to start to do that, right? Let's bring the story to life. Let's take what we mapped out, and now let's see if it even matches what we had in our mind. Are we capable of filming the story that we thought we were able to, right? Do we have the tools necessary in order to put this in place? So filming in progress. You got the college esports discussions as well, which is super awesome, by the way. So just as a little bit of an aside, you get some of that mentorship as they got to hear it from some very special individuals, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is that point where things kind of shift from me being in the lead to them being in the lead. You know, these students are now kind of taking charge at this point. You know, they have all the tools they need. They have their storyboard. They've been shown how to take their film. They've been given the tools to learn and execute on DaVinci Resolve. Now it's just kind of meeting the individual needs of each school. And with that, it allows a bit of time to bring in those mentorship and those guest speakers. For our Green Bay and Carolina students, they had a chance to meet with UWRF and Edgewood to talk about collegiate esports and what that pathway looks like, and what, if some schools offer esports scholarships, some don't. What do both of those look like? What opportunities for what esports are at schools in local areas? And, same thing on the NFL player side, which students were absolutely thrilled with when we had Kearns Academy out in the Carolina region get to meet with Jonathan Stewart and Brenton Burson. Students were absolutely thrilled by this. They discussed self-promotion, personal branding, overcoming nerves, career transitions. NFL players, they have their successful NFL careers, but sometimes you don't really hear about what happens next with those players. And, almost every one of those players goes on to do something. And, talking to Stewart and Burson, even when they're in their careers, people are reaching out saying, hey, do you want to be in on this business? Do you want to be involved on this business? Because, they know that these players, have a bit of money to work with, have a bit to look for what they want to do post NFL career, and really think about investments and where they want to go after the NFL. What do they want to be involved in? Because with that kind of money, it allows for more creativity and allows you to really think about what you want to do. And I think it goes the same way for any other, career as well. These NFL players are transitioning from the career as a player to the career as, being entrepreneurs. It's the same for the number of students nowadays, the number of adults who do career shifts. I was a director of esports. Now I'm a director of education. I was a teacher before being a director of esports. Those are all these different roles and all these different changes that really, are pretty common nowadays. So hearing NFL players, players that some of these students recognize, Jonathan Stewart and Brenton Burson played, man, these kids were probably like 8, 9 when these guys were playing, and they still recognized these players, which was really cool, because in the bit of the moment they're a bit shell-shocked even on a virtual meetup with them. But the moment those players got off the call, immediately I hear one of the kids say, oh my god, that was Jonathan Stewart, can you believe that? Like it was such a cool experience. It was really cool to see those student reactions, and it really, I think, opened up students as well to understanding that these skills are basically universal that they're learning right now. Video editing, everyone needs marketing nowadays. Everyone needs social media nowadays. Every company needs it. So the skills they're learning, even if they want to change industries per se, they can still be involved using the same skills across all of these different industries. And I think that's something that's really sparked in students' minds. Like, hey, I can be working with these same skills in college. These skills can help me get into certain colleges possibly if I'm able to use skills like video editing and graphic design here. And then when I graduate, even if I get a degree in something completely unrelated, I still have these skills I can fall back on if I ever want a career switch or get involved in a different industry. And I think that's really stuck out to students too.
I feel like that's one of the scariest things, that we shove our seniors out from, what was their safe little community into the secondary education. They may even go across the country, maybe even across the world to go to wherever they're going to do university, or even just going to maybe kind of learning tech skills, otherwise a kind of a trade college. And it's that you can change your pathway at any given time. It feels like, all right, you need to know exactly what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Grow up, go. No. The best advice that I was ever given is that you can literally remake your life about every 7 years. And you have a different pathway that you can be able to take. And it's just about all those skills you take along the way. So love that got kind of reinforced. And that definitely you see how this kind of mesh of skills really does spread and diversify for everyone. Also, UWF, Freddie the Falcon, I love you. Fly, Eagles, fly.
I remember we were casting an NECC match, actually. That's really funny you brought him back into the picture. All right, I love it, man. Let's go. All right, storyboard review time. It's we get down to business, quite literally, brass tacks, if you will, as we get to see these students in their storyboards. What did they put together? We saw their inspiration. Now let's see what stories they put together. And so I'll bring up an example rubric that's something that you built, Justin, and take us through the things you were looking for in these stories.
Yeah, let's run super quick through it. Initially right off the bat for a lot of this, like I said, if students are being creative and are using the skills I taught them, I'm not super concerned about how in-depth it is. If they're meeting the debrief, which is that first line item there, if they're able to just put together 6 storyboard frames like I asked them to do, if they include those details below, like in the example where they're saying what's happening, and they're including Brightspeed, they're going to get full credit for that. Same with storyboard knowledge, just knowing the basics of how to create a storyboard. I've given them this example format outline that if they follow that to the core, they're going to get full credit for it. Same with design specifications, making sure to have that 6 frames. And, if you go above and beyond, great, perfect. But making sure you meet those minimal 6 frames, making sure you're having the different types of shots, the wide shots, the close-up shots. Having those different shots is huge. Obviously, credit for creative process. And if I haven't alluded to it already, I think you're going to see some very high marks on the creative process side. And then overall, that final design. What does the whole final product look like on a piece of paper? Because we can talk about the nitty gritty of, hey, this is slightly not exactly how I want. This is not slightly how I want it. But if I look at it as an overview, can I do exactly what I said? Can I hand it off to your educator, and can your educator go film this right now? So, there's a lot of different elements that go into it. But overall, if you're able to hit that final design, you can be in pretty good shape.
There you go. Setting the bar. We talked about how it's going to be, it's going to be real, right? You want that prime example. There's no better way to grow. So let's get into it. We already learned the regions, so we get to see the regions in actions in the schools within those regions. Let's start with the Green Bay region first, as we have our first submission will be Green Bay Southwest High School. So Justin, first initial reactions that you had to this one, walk us through the storyboard.
I'll say my first initial reaction is that these guys are going to have to be some athletes here. They kind of have this storyboard image of a player basically getting integrated into the game and actually going into the world of Madden and making some throws and catches themselves. So I think that's a really cool idea of kind of like being the sucked into the stream kind of concept. And I think that's super awesome. Be able to kind of have like, oh, the bad internet, oh, my game glitched. Oh no, I can't believe this is happening. And like all of a sudden, bad internet, everything's falling apart, and bringing that back together with Brightspeed, I think it's overall a really, really cool idea.
I do too. I actually I put together a very similar idea, Monkey.
Yeah, this one felt like it actually is very ambitious, but also really effective because the message is pretty clear. It's like, all right, you're gonna mess up unless you got good internet. And I love that they actually go with key focuses. Like they're at the game, but you can have the transition from them in the office and then actually having the game. So that's gonna make for some really fun shots. And having that kind of that bad internet sign gives kind of key logo placement that you can have as if you're being trying to do this for Brightspeed overall. So this is actually a really funny one. This is one of my favorites.
Yeah, ambitious for sure. I was talking about like, hey, do we have the tools necessary in order to make this happen? Now, what's the cut look like, from the actual computer to being in the game itself? Like that matters. So listen, if you want to test your editing skills, that's one of the best ways to do it. Let's go ahead and get into the rubric now and see what you scored. So judges, what you got here, Justin?
Yeah, overall, I was pretty happy with this one, all things considered. I was very happy with the overall project. I felt that they fulfilled most of that. And I was also felt like they understood how to execute a storyboard. Now, design specifications, there is a few points off. Looking back at that project, you don't really see those bottom words and blurbs of what exactly is happening in each scene, which to me made it a bit hard to exactly interpret. I could pick up what they're putting down in the images, but ultimately I couldn't really see, what's happening in each one. Is there dialogue happening here? What are they talking about? So wasn't exactly perfect on design specifications. They were docked a few for that. But creative process was on point, and outside of missing those words at the bottom of each panel, the final design was very thorough, very good. I personally understood what they were going for, but did it meet the need where if I handed off to their teacher right now, would they be able to execute it? Close, not quite exactly, but overall, I mean, they got a really good score. I'm pretty sure they got 43 out of 50. So overall, I would say it was a very impressive start from them.
See, that's how I know I can't be an educator, because I would have looked straight at that and been like, this is awesome, get going. And then realized, oh, wait, there needs to be some level of critical thinking and feedback there. So I also appreciate, as just kind of like a separate sidebar, the rubric is actually very akin to what you can get from a collegiate side of getting grades. So I love that you actually implemented that for this, because it does hit kind of syllabus-centric styles for whenever you go into those other kind of education levels.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think that's, kind of the goal here is that for these students, like we said, like I've hedged my expectations appropriately, but it's set up in a style that everything on there seems like a lot for a rubric, but is all very attainable by, you know, basic listening, basic understanding of what they've learned. If they're able to execute on that, the product can be decent. It doesn't have to be blow me out of the park. But if they understand the basics of what they need to do to get a storyboard done, I'm a happy camper because I believe seeing that group, they could go replicate and make another storyboard for another commercial right now if they wanted to. And that's ultimately the goal. Can they replicate this again and again?
Good start so far for the Green Bay region. So obviously just one high school to go up against in that region. We've got Bayport High School now. We'll bring up their project, and as is tradition, first reactions for me, love the love the characters. Looks a lot like my drawings, Justin, but go a little bit deeper than that, obviously.
Yeah, I think Bayport does something very cool and very interesting here about something that I honestly don't think I even brought up on the broadcast, was that Brightspeed does a lot of service to rural communities, especially. And they touch on this really hard with the kind of farmer theme to this. And I think that's absolutely above and beyond, in my opinion. I was extremely impressed by that. They obviously found their own storyboard format print off. I didn't give them this one, so they also did their own research on that end. Overall, I was absolutely thrilled by this, and I'll give you a little sneak peek and say I've seen some of their raw footage already, and it had me, not even joking, actually had me laughing out loud. So I gotta say, this group did a really good job with the storyboard, and their footage also shows exactly what they did. I 100% think their educator could pick this up and put it down.
That's fantastic. Monkey, you were laughing too.
Just the I'm evil overalls, like, come on, that is amazing. Like, you have the I hate, like, it's just stellar. Also hits home because I know that I'm a techie guy and I love engineering and STEM, but a lot of my cousins and a lot of my family are like farmers. They do cotton, cattle, and corn, so the big C's. So knowing that there's a lot of that connection, especially with rural communities and cities and everything, really kind of hits. I'm like, all right, cool. I need to go get my overalls out of my closet, I guess.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you need to tune into the Players League STEM special edition, because I want to see this one come to life. Justin's already got a sneak peek, and I'm already jealous. So that being said, now that we've seen Bayport High School, let's check out the rubric and see how you scored it, Justin.
Yeah, I basically had almost no complaints on this one. Overall, they got a 54 out of 50. They got bonus points because, you know, I appreciate on-time submissions and ahead-of-time submissions. You know, I think they did an absolutely outstanding job with this one. You know, I do think some of the camera angles were missing in this initial one. The one thing I didn't see was that big landscape shot here. So they did actually lose a point for that. They don't really have a landscape shot set up. They actually already fixed that in their footage. I can tell you that for a fact. So they already do a good job of recovering on that. But overall, like I said, this is a storyboard I like. I think it comes together well. I think it's something that's very within their range of being able to execute. Great product.
49 out of 50. Is that right?
Yeah, 49 out of 50, and then got their
plus.
bonus points for on-time submission. Yes, sir.
Wow.
Fantastic
Nice.
work. Monkey's like that one, likes that one. I do too, man. Like, that was spectacular. So that's definitely raising the bar up here for the Green Bay region, not only for the school within your region, but also for other regions across the way. Another one from the Central region is the Houston region specifically. And we'll kick off with Woodlands High Christian Academy. As Woodlands put this together, Justin, take us through it.
Yeah, Woodlands put on something that I think was absolutely fantastic, in that they're actually incorporating that Madden aspect into the work. So being able to have two people going head to head in Madden 25, and then they do the cutaway where they go to the Brightspeed rep. So I'm really excited to see one of them dressed up as a Brightspeed rep. Because I'm like, what do you imagine a Brightspeed rep looking like? Apparently they have a bow tie and some glasses on them. I'll tell you, our Brightspeed rep that we've been working with, Brian, I'll tell you, he doesn't look exactly like that. So maybe now that they've met Brian, maybe they'll change it to make it look a bit more like him. I think that'd be really funny. But they actually went a bit further than just doing 6 storyboard slides. I think they actually have a bit more to theirs as well. Yeah, they had a couple more here as well. Just kind of going back to celebrating. Yes, Brightspeed has saved the day yet again. Honestly, I think that's a common narrative we see across a lot of these. Is Brightspeed is the superhero in shining armor across these storyboards, which I absolutely love. And once again, finishing off with that Brightspeed rep and the bow tie and glasses, I absolutely love it.
I don't think you change the rep in this. I think you change Brian. Get Brian a bow tie. Make sure that Brian ups his game. Come on. Unless maybe Brian's already wearing a suit. I don't know. This one, it feels kind of on the nose and direct. It also kind of harkens back. Do you guys remember the I'm a PC, I'm a Mac? I feel like there's some of that kind of staging going on with this. I like the message that they're sending.
I 100% agree. I think that's an amazing comparison, honestly. And like, this is something that I'm sure those students haven't seen. So their draw history repeats itself. They're really drawing back on that really well here. I think I agree with that.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and check out again. We see that sneak peek. Well, let's get to the rubric now and see how you scored it. And wow, this is the best one yet. Yeah,
it's a perfect score, guys. Yeah, they knocked it out of the park. From it felt like a real commercial, being like, has this ever happened to you? And then like, I'm here to help and fix your problem. And then people celebrate, and then it goes, come help at Brightspeed. We got you. It's a very traditional commercial format, but it's a try and true that you see over and over again. Hard to complain about something that works.
It has heroes, Marvel Rivals coming out. Like, that's irrelevant in addition to it, right? It's something that everybody can relate to as well. So I definitely like that one too. Monkey Man, do you have any final thoughts?
It looks good. I can't wait to see who has to dress up, because I'm sure that's just going to be a fun time, especially for all the different shots they'll make.
All right, Stafford High School, you're up next in the Houston region. You got some big shoes to fill to go up against, and this is what you got. It looks nice here, Justin.
Yeah, I would say Stafford did something very unique that I didn't necessarily say they should do, but I think it's a direction I'm comfortable with, and that's basically using AI to help with this, it looks like. So they were able to kind of use digital technology, digital drawings to help kind of create this storyboard for them. Now, I will say, when you use other software to kind of create your ideas, it can be a bit ambitious at times. This one definitely has a bit of ambition. There's a whole Coliseum, there's a gladiator. I can see this coming to life. I can definitely see how this comes to life, but I think it's probably not going to look exactly like this at the end of the day, ultimately, which isn't a complaint to me. They're not going to get docked for that portion of it, but it is something I think that's important that they're going to have to keep in mind going forward.
You know what? Something with this, it would be such an Uno reverse card. Have you ever seen when people do, they see like an anime or a show they're trying to be able to do cosplay for, but then they do super simplified cosplay and play. So instead the armor becomes like just a cardboard box. We go from this insane image we have right here, and then instead it's just some guy wearing like a trash can instead of the big armor or any of the big pads, and then instead of a Coliseum, it's just like a bowl that you've drawn on some stick figure people. Some of the simplicity that could come through that as an execution of shots could actually shine through with us. If high bars they set for themselves artistically, you could set the 180 and it'd be real funny as well.
Yeah, I've been to enough MomoCons to know that that's a very doable thing at the end of the day. I'm sure they can come up with some really good original cosplay that can make that work for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see if it matches the vibe here. We'll check out the rubric now and see what you got here. You can kind of walk us through.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about this one, kind of what happened. First off, this project did come in a bit late. And for me, there is going to be a bit of a penalty for late work, similar to in the real world. If you're working for a business, I can't have a social media post coming to me 2 weeks later than expected. Because if I need to post about something, I have to do it in the moment. So there was some dockage for that. But overall, I think the creative ideas are there. I think they understand what the storyboard is. I think they could repeat doing the storyboard. I like their creative ideas involved. My big issue was, technically there was 4 panels. I asked for 6. That's kind of like just not meeting the base assignment criteria, in my opinion. Yeah. So for me, it may seem harsh, but it's what the rubric is designed to do here. The rubric is set up very easily, where if you follow the instructions and you take away what you learned about storyboarding, you should be able to get a straight 50. But because they just weren't able to get those 6 panels completely kind of sliced out, there was some docking of points for that across the board. Overall, though, I told them very straight up, if there were 6 clear panels here and a very clear idea of those 6 panels, it would have been a 50 out of 50. They're 2 panels short of being a perfect score, in my opinion. So they're very much close to a perfect storyboard here, just missing a couple of those base elements that were needed.
And that's fair, because I worked in contracting, and every single time and every single year that you go into your next annual, they say, hey, We have these goals to meet. You're repeated on a quarterly basis. And if you do not meet those, and especially within a 12-month time frame, then you get docked an award fee. And your percent goes down, and that's the amount that affects your overall contract you sit on. So, same thing. If you're asked for 6, you deliver 4, there's going to be a little bit of a negative brought to it. So, it makes total sense.
Not to beat it to death, but like also in sales. So when I used to work exclusively in sales, and that would dock my pay if I didn't reach out to a certain amount of individuals or close a certain amount of sales. So it's always important to listen to those details, because ultimately they do matter in the performance of a business and therefore in your job. So we'll keep that in mind as well. Well, let's go ahead and transition over to the Carolina region, where we've got T. Wingate Andrews first in their submission. And this one, I love the artistic design to it, just simply because of like the shadow and like the thicker lines really brings my attention. Obviously, that's not exactly the details we're looking for. So Justin, that's why I leave the specialty to you.
Yeah, I think for this one, I 100% understand from their images, beginning to end, what I'm getting out of here. You know, the person playing the game, you know, getting teleported, the kind of bringing people together through internet. I think that's been a big conversation about esports in general, is that what brings everyone together ultimately is that ability to play online. Obviously, we love our LAN events when we get to be part of them, but so much of esports is done online nowadays. And being able to talk about that and the importance of that for, you know, how internet is brought into that is really strong. And Brian from Brightspeed said the same thing when they had a chance to talk with him. He was like, I want to see that connection of, hey, internet is important to gaming because it's what connects people and brings them together. And I think they do a very good job of that. But I'll prelude a bit and say you can already see that I think there are words at the bottom of this image, but it was cut off. So I don't see the words for that second half. And you may see some reflection in that when we talk about the rubric.
You know, I had a question to the overall challenge. Okay, well, there was a reflection, but it's a really good score. But to that end, were they given a certain amount of time for the commercials? Because that commercial in particular felt like it could flex between being a 30-second or a 15-second, and it had that flexibility depending on how much they wanted to elaborate that message of that connection. What was the kind of the time slot that they've been told they need to fill for Brightspeed? Is it 30 seconds?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I basically told them, hey, 30 seconds should be your goal, but I'm not going to be upset if you come out. I'm not going to, you know, they're not going to get docked if they hit 15 and they're done. They're not going to get docked if they hit a minute and they're done. If they go beyond a minute, or if they're under 15, that's where the real issue begins. So aim for 30. If you don't, you know, hit the nail on the head, completely fine. Just make sure to fall into that range. And, you know, that reflects here in their rubric as well. You know, they hit on basically everything. Like I said, I can tell at the bottom of that picture that there are words there. They're just not in the picture. And that's kind of just, you know, the error of submission. They got docked 2 points for it. You know, if I could tell the words weren't there, you know, I probably would have docked more, but I can tell there's words there. The submission just didn't have everything on it. You know, if I'm here and I'm getting a social media graphic and at the half of it's cut off, you know, I can't say that you submitted the social media graphic in full. But overall, great product. Very easygoing storyboard, very easy concept, very easy to execute. Not really any complaints across the board other than that one small thing. You know, they got 48 out of 50 and got 5 extra points for turning it in on time. So they got a 53 out of 50. It's pretty good to me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%. I love that it's, you know, simple, but it's extremely clear, right? And it has a message. Internet bringing us together is simple. Everybody can get behind it and everybody can understand it. And that's what I truly appreciated with that one too, with T. Wingate Andrews. So great job to the students that put that together. We've got Kearns Academy now. Let's bring up their project and check this out. Of course, we know the drill, so I'll leave it to Justin for your first reactions here.
Yeah, I can't wait to see this one in footage because there seems to be a phone thrown out a window in this one. So I'm very interested to see how that one is executed on.
Not my phone.
But overall, very straightforward. You know, internet's not working. We got a rager in the room, throw something out. Another person happily at home, you know, being like, hey, everything's working, right? Because I have Brightspeed and he doesn't. Haha. I seize the day. You know, very easygoing, very clear. I'm a big fan of it.
I actually, the biggest thing I appreciate about this one is even within the confines of each of the panels that they made it very clear what kind of camera shots they want to go for this. I think that definitely is going to be reflectant as long as they take this storyboard and run with it as to a quality upgrade versus some of the others that may end up be very dependent for digital or just kind of getting, positioning from between people. This seems like you barely even need to have like a regular person in there, and it all could be from like a hand model and then the furniture placement and then just some solid kind of voice acting put on top. So I actually appreciate both the simplicity but also the complexity for where they put their shots.
Yeah, analytics are going a long way with you two. I'm just seeing like a heart at the bottom left and like, oh, I kind of like this one. So that's why y'all get do a great job of breaking this down. So let's check out the rubric that Justin put together as well and see where they got a pretty good score, I would say.
Yeah, they got a 50 out of 50. They didn't get the bonus points for on-time submission because their submission was basically after the class, but on the same day. So I was kind of like, you got to me by EOD. So, we'll call it even on this one. Overall, though, absolutely great. Had covered what's going on in each scene below, had all the shots involved, very nicely written, very clear, very easy to see. Cool, too. You might not be able to tell from that picture, but they actually did it on like their active board in the classroom. So like those interactive whiteboards. They actually drew it on the interactive whiteboard and took a picture of it on there, which, I gotta say is great if a student has that in the classroom, be able to just go ahead, draw on a giant whiteboard, take a picture of it. Really cool way of doing it.
That's awesome.
Carolina region really bringing it. Listen, they say that they're down in education numbers. I disagree. At least the individuals that we found are very, very much intrigued into this STEM project, and it showed through their scores. So congratulations to the Carolina region for putting it on. You love to see that. Let's go up to New England and see if the rest of the Eastern Coast can get it done, starting with SMSA in their submission here, which you see plenty of words on the page, and you see a good story here too. Justin, take us to it.
And plenty of stick figures. I think this is where Bear might want to go to school for a bit. But being able to kind of cover this, area of where you're talking about the classic no internet, the school needs help getting it put together. Brightspeed comes in, explains why Brightspeed works and what it is. Brightspeed comes in with a rep, kind of talks about it. Students are happy, the school's happy. Very straightforward. Shows Brightspeed impacting communities and covers all the different shots. Has good explanations. I gotta be honest, it's a pretty good one.
Just the fact, okay, panel 2, and they're like, this is embarrassing. That is fantastic. Oh my gosh. Some of these have been either like just showing all positives or working off of what is an obstacle as a negative to then be overcome by Brightspeed as that connection force. And I love that they've taken these different ways, but also that just seeing, have just a real thing, like seeing your teachers struggle and you're like, wow, this would be so much better if we had, and then they show up and they can have that better in it. That's actually really funny.
No more losing Wi-Fi during class, it says at the bottom right. But did they lose any points? Let's check out the rubric.
Ooh. They sure didn't. They put out a great work. It was an on-time submission. They got 55 out of 50. They hit every nail on the head. I just can't have any complaints about this. It looks easily executable. It looks like something they could do. I could go film this right now if I wanted to. I'm sure their educator could as well.
Wow, that's great. Listen, there's nothing else to say than you've done a good job, because like you mentioned plenty of times, Justin, it's literally like you can leave it off to somebody. They can execute on it. We understand it. Therefore, less discussion sometimes means more. So I like to see that. So great job again, SMSA, showing up for the New England side. There's only one high school left. So let's go to it. It's Hartford Public High School, which is one of my favorite drawings, at least. Look at the clock, the detail on the TV. So I know that's not what it's all about. That's what caught my eye. Justin, what caught yours?
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's one of those things that kind of took on a very interesting concept. They actually told the story of joining Players League, which I thought was a very fascinating approach to it. I would say it's definitely original, even if it's real world storytelling, which so many commercials do nowadays. You build credibility through showing the real world experiences, and that's what they do. They show it from, the kid at school who plays Madden casually to being introduced to their teacher to join, to then competing in Madden and becoming an esports champion. I think it's a very, very cool original concept, and I love the storytelling of it, of being true to what the students experienced.
I think the one thing that probably has to scream through, because like you show the journey and you show a realistic outcome of what you can do, especially when you have internet, is probably maintaining that the message is, Brightspeed as well. I think that, I suffer from just overanalyzing whenever I have to deal with commercials, because I just, sometimes it just becomes rough to deal with. And it's like, all right, is this about to be a Tide ad? Is this a Nissan commercial? And you're like, all right, what's happening? And then it busts out of nowhere at the very end, and then you slap the logo on top of it. So this almost feels like it's going to do the same thing. It's like, what made this journey possible? Brightspeed. Just doing something like that. So, but yeah, no, this is actually one of my favorite drawings. This is great.
It looks like my doodles back from high school. So I'm just like showcasing how maybe I'm not the prime example. That's why we learn from like NFL pros and respectable people around the. Well, go ahead and show us the rubric right now. And let's check it out, and you can kind of give us a breakdown of what are the points where they fell.
Yeah, so let's talk about this one. Like I said, love the creative, love the drawings. And I think Monkey Man really talked to this point very well. Brightspeed isn't really in here. I'm gonna be honest. I could see where Brightspeed could be very easily included, but that's just not reflected in the storyboard. And the scoring is gonna reflect that. From design debrief, Brightspeed being in it is a major part of making the commercial, and I just don't feel like that's really hit on the mark here. And really, that's the only thing they had points taken off for across the board. The design specifications missed because Brightspeed wasn't in it. Final design took a hit because Brightspeed wasn't in it. They also, another late assignment, so they got docked pretty heavily there. Prior to the late assignment docking, they had a 37 out of 50. Afterwards, it was only a 27 out of 50 because of how late it was. But once again, I told them, if this is on time and Brightspeed is even mentioned anywhere in these panels, it's a perfect score. Like, they have the creative there, they have the images there. It's very clear they know how to make a storyboard. They just missed the one aspect, which is so important to all of this, Brightspeed. And if they have that, it's a perfect score. So they're on the right track. As long as Brightspeed's in there, I think they're good to go.
And I feel like that's such an easy execution to be able to add, and I'm going to be very interested. Obviously, we had like a lot of students have submitted and they were able to get their projects in, and they had very high scores. For this one, I will be interested to see how it does improve, because I mean, I'm already thinking about the easy implementation to make it happen. You have that exact story they just wrote, and you can be like, all right, I'm ready to begin my esports journey. And then you can just have a Brightspeed cable guy installing in the background. And he's like, yeah, you can do it. And then like they could go the whole parallel together. And it's kind of like when we had the rep at the end, when he wins the trophy, high five the Brightspeed guy. That's easy. That's a fun way to do it, maybe.
He's got to have a bow tie though. If he doesn't have the bow
He's
tie,
got
and glasses.
Come on, Brian.
I've got half of it. I volunteer as tribute. I will be.
I'm telling you right now, Brian is he's not what you think of like the typical IT guy. He's got the big muscles going on. He's a big 2K guy and a big Madden guy. So he's kind of got that athletic feel to him. I don't know if he's a bow tie and glasses guy, but I'm sure if we ask, we can convince him.
I certainly will next time I see Brian. Brian, an excellent individual, by the way. He was at our announcement at the Super Bowl, and he actually was on a podcast with us, and it was fantastic listening to hear his perspective. So shout out to Brian for Brightspeed for being an integral part of this project as a whole, for sure. All right, well, we've seen all the projects. I think it was a great week one, all things considered. Nobody didn't send in a project, which I've seen it in the past in different activations, so that's a good step. Obviously, timeliness matters, so hopefully if you're listening to this and got it in a little late, timeliness will matter in the future weeks, but that does bring us to the future weeks. So, Justin, lay the path ahead of us. Where do we go next as far as weeks 5 through 10 are concerned?
Yeah, so I think this is really a very interesting part of a bit of a behind-the-curtain kind of feel to it here. Spring breaks begin happening now. Everyone's on a different schedule at this point. Yep. There is some additional difficulties that come in from our side and from Players League side as a whole to make this happen. And with that, everyone's schedule's a bit different at this point. We have, for example, Houston was on spring break March 10th. They have a very early spring break going on. Meanwhile, Carolina and New England don't have off until the 3rd week of April, I believe. So, everyone's on a very different schedule at this point. Most groups, though, are finishing up their filming right now. I think at least half of them have completely done their filming and have moved on to video editing at this point. And the other half are, finishing up their filming and getting ready to jump into video editing really soon. They're going to practice video editing before they work on their final project. I've given them some Madden footage from some championship games to be able to, work on that a tiny bit and get some practice in before they move on to their final project. But, in the next 2 weeks here, you're going to start seeing them putting together their final project, doing those final video edits. And then a few weeks from now, we have to narrow that panel down.
Be tough. That would be tough, Monkey Man. We saw a lot of great projects, but it's going to be fun. The next Stim broadcast, we're going to be reviewing those rough drafts, by the way, submitted from each team. Which one are you most looking forward to? I'll let you play favorites just this once.
Ooh, me? Oh my goodness. Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna ask Justin too, but I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna answer me. I don't know if he's gonna answer me.
I'm not going to answer you. I'm going to be honest. I'm excited for them to all cross the finish line because, like I said, all of this is about if they're able to cross the finish line once, it is something that's repeatable for them and a skill they have long term. So if every school, when they cross the finish line, I think that's what I'm most excited for, is for them to be able to cross that finish line.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. They'll be graded live, by the way. So that's a little bit of added pressure, too, for them to be in person, be able to hear, exactly what that feedback is. And it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, especially when you're doing things live, whether it be at a LAN performing in esports or whether it be giving yourself a group project that Monkey Man knows and loves so well. Isn't that right?
Oh, yes, all the time. Justin, I have a question. If you're going to be grading these live, and, teachers, they have a favorite grading utensil, are you bringing a red pin live? Will we see the slashes and checks? Is that going to happen in real time for us?
No, not at all. I don't know how I'm going to, grade it. Maybe I do print it off and I do it like my March Madness bracket or something, but, maybe we go classic original like that, but, for the sake of you all, maybe we'll just do it digitally to keep it safe.
Okay, all right, I understand. And also, the best way to do your March Madness bracket, if they have the color blue, they're winning. That's literally all you have to do, okay?
Has that worked for you?
It gets me about to the Sweet 16, and then it fails from there.
Listen, y'all, gentlemen, it's been an excellent Stim first broadcast here for Players League. We appreciate y'all joining us.
Been fun. It's been awesome, Bear. Got to see so many awesome times here with Justin. And Justin, you've been a thrill ride. The one thing that we didn't get out of you, because this was actually asked in the chat by one of our awesome fellow casters and Mr. Bepic out of Huntington. He said we're supposed to ask you about your fantasy football knowledge. So are you a big fantasy football knower, my man?
Oh, gosh. Mr. Bepic, first of all, love you, man. He's absolutely incredible. I hope to see him again soon. I think there's an event in a couple weeks in Alabama I might see him at, honestly. But outside of that, for me on my end, I'm a big fantasy guy across the board right now. Initially, when I was probably the age of these Players League students, if not younger, I originally wanted to be a fantasy sports analyst. That was originally my dream job. I remember, my first season playing fantasy football, I won the championship. I had Chad Pennington at quarterback from the Miami Dolphins. I had Dallas Clark for the Colts back in the day. I remember that first season vividly, and it stuck with me my entire life. Fantasy football right now, baseball season's just under a week away. I am ready to get into it again. Like I said, Philadelphia diehard. I'm ready to support my Phillies. Did my fantasy baseball draft last week in Atlanta. Hey, you can boo all you want. I know everyone hates Bryce Harper. I get it. But overall, I'm a big fantasy guy across the board. Big March Madness guy, big sports guy, big all of that.
I love it. 100% love it.
Nest Main Drumline, Birds fan, and a fantasy football guy.
You're learning a lot.
Just so you know, Drumline boy, I was a tromboner. Okay, so you have to deal with that knowledge all you like.
I can sense that from you. Don't worry, I know.
Thank you. Yes.
Was it a compliment?
I wasn't sure that was. Yeah.
Embody that.
All right, y'all. We've got March Madness going on. We'll check the brackets. We've got an NFL Live draft party, essentially, as the STEM winners from each region will be joining us in Green Bay. That's happening down the line. A few weeks, we'll get the rough drafts going so we can determine who gets there. So there's a lot on this Players League that you don't want to miss. So follow Stay Plugged In here on Twitch. Follow us on Twitter as well, so that way you can keep up with everything Players League. Until next time, y'all take care. Good night.